You're listening to Life Repair Recovery Talk Radio with Rick Thompson, only on LA Talk Radio.
Good evening. Welcome to the show. This evening's show will address the topic of newcomers in a 12-step program and their experiences in beginning the journey of recovery. Tonight, if I'm not mistaken, we have 4 guests in the studio. The first is Dr. Mary Koster. Dr. Koster is a renowned psychotherapist specializing in the treatment of addictions, solution-focused therapy, and clinical hypnotherapy. And our special guests, Lorena, Missy, and Christopher. Is everybody here?
Yeah. Lorena and Christopher are here.
Okay, Lorena. All right, that's great. All right, Lorena and Christopher are here. And Dr. Koster, you're here?
Yep, I am.
Then we're rolling. And how unusual for it all to fall into place like this. It's thrilling. Why don't we start out with the abbreviated versions of your stories? Let's begin with Lorena and then Christopher. Lorena.
Okay. So my name's Lorena, and I have 103 days sobriety today. My story is I came from an abusive home, and I was in a relationship for about 19 years, and that ended due to alcoholism and drugs, and I left that relationship because it became abusive, and then I ended up moving back home because my mother was sick, so I took care of her until she passed away, and that was 2 years ago. So I've been dealing with a lot of grief from that. I recently moved back into the house that we used to live in, so that's been difficult. And I'm back new into sobriety, and there's just been a lot of hurt in my life, a lot of grief, a lot of loss. My father died when I was 13, so he's been out of the picture for a while. He was abusive. And my mom also, she was afraid to stand up to him because of the repercussions. So I was living in, I had actually, when my mom passed, I had a nervous breakdown, and I went into a mental hospital, and I was there for a while, and I was being stalked by my ex-boyfriend, so I was transferred to another hospital, and he found me there also. So I've just kind of been hiding from that, and just trying to work on my recovery and staying sober, and that's just kind of the short part of my story.
Is this your first time in recovery?
Yes. Well, I had been in recovery a couple years ago, but I relapsed because I had gotten involved with someone else, and that relationship became abusive, and he's the one still stalking me. And so,
how much time did you have that time in sobriety?
That sobriety, I had 9 months.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
What is the drug of choice?
I'm sorry?
The drug of choice? What do you do?
Alcohol and prescription medication.
How'd you get on the prescription? Yeah, how'd you get on the prescription medication? That was going to be my next thought.
Oh, actually, I had a slip and fall accident, and I injured my back, and I had 3 back surgeries.
Jesus.
So I still walk with a cane today, and I'm on my, I just, went back to a new doctor, and I'm starting my physical therapy and all of that all over again. So I have arthritis in my back, so I'm not on any narcotics right now. So I'm just,
What are you taking for in lieu of narcotics?
I'm sorry?
What are you taking in lieu of narcotics? What medicines?
Just naproxen and Tylenol.
Okay. Do they help?
Somewhat, not really, but I just, I live with chronic pain every day, so I've just, have to deal with that.
Right.
And just maintain my sobriety.
How long were you addicted to prescription meds?
Probably since I was 21. I had my first car accident when I was. Oh, how old?
How old are you? Yeah, how old are you now? How long has it been that you've had an addiction to pain meds?
Well, I'm 42 now, so 30 years.
Okay, it's a long time.
Yeah.
Wow, I wasn't expecting that number. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And I mean, for as long as you've been doing that and been engaged in that addictive behavior, when I met you, I would have never known that you had you've been taking medication that long. That's just that's unreal. At what age did you begin drinking and using drugs exactly, and how did it start? Was it basically reiterating your story to a little point when you never were that engaged in doing drugs until you had the back surgeries? Is that accurate?
No, that's not accurate. I started drinking when I was 12 years old, and I started taking medication when I was 21. I had a car accident.
Right.
I wrecked my truck, so I would have died if I hadn't been wearing my seatbelt. So they put me on pain medication.
Were you drinking? Were you drinking?
No, not when I had the accident, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I was.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was going to go to another question, but if you're not finished with your answer, please go ahead.
No, I have one more question here. On siblings, I want to know about your siblings. How many do you have? Where are you in the family?
I'm the youngest of four. I have a sister and two brothers. And they're all...
Any other people in the family abuse substances?
No. Just,
okay, your mother, your father, either one of them, were they abusive of substances?
Not on well, my father was a drinker and diabetic, and my mom suffered from anxiety and depression and panic attacks. So I got a lot of her anxiety and depression, so I suffer from that.
Okay.
Yeah, so I have a mental disorder, and so I'm on, the psychotropic drugs, but nothing narcotic, no benzos, no pain medication, no alcohol.
Okay, are your family members behind you, your brothers and sisters?
Right now, my brothers don't speak to me, and I'm not allowed to see their children. My sister and her family, they're supportive. So
okay.
they're just, yeah.
That's my last question here, so go on, Rick.
Okay. Well, let me ask you a direct question. Have you had enough? And
yes.
Tell me how you know that.
I know that because I hit my rock bottom and I lost my family. I just had nothing left, and I became technically homeless. And I was, if it wasn't for the mental hospital that I was in, then I would have been on the street. And that terrified me.
Do you mind telling us what did you do that had your family abandon you so abruptly?
Well, when my mom passed away, I relapsed. So I was taking care of her, and I thought I would be prepared. I thought I would be ready for it because I had lost my dad at 13, and she had been sick, and I didn't want her to be sick anymore. I just wanted her to be better. But I wasn't, I just wasn't strong enough to go through with that. So I ended up going and buying a box of wine. I left my 10-year-old nephew here at the house while I went to buy booze. And my mom was still alive then. And I bought a box of wine, and I took some, too many of my pain medication. I tried to commit suicide.
Okay.
So that's
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you.
Christopher here?
Yes, he's right here.
Christopher?
Hey.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm right here. I'm doing all right.
Let's hear, how long have you been sober?
This time around, I have 19 days right now.
Incredible. Good job. Tell us a little bit about your background.
All right. I grew up in a upper middle class family. My dad was an alcoholic. He is an alcoholic, but he never drank around me or my siblings. He always would, he'd disappear for a while, so I don't have any memories of him being drunk. He was never abusive. After my parents got divorced, my dad stopped drinking, but he smoked pot up until about 6 years ago. He's actually in the program. He's got 6 years clean and sober right now. My mother put me through hell. She had strange men coming around the house, drugs. They'd steal my video games and all this crazy shit. And excuse my language.
It's okay. Go ahead.
And,
How old were you?
They got divorced when I was 6. I was 6 years old.
Okay.
The first time I don't remember the first time I drank really, because my grandparents owned a bar, and so as a young kid, I would see all the people drinking, and I kind of romanticized it because they looked like they were having fun, and so I would sneak sips of old beers or old drinks and steal cigarettes from the guys and go in the back of the bar and drink them, and I didn't, it didn't really affect my, I enjoyed it. It took a lot of the stress away. And then I started stealing weed from my dad about 11. And, I smoked pot all the way through high school. And I didn't have really problems with the police or anything.
Let me stop you right there for a second. I'd like you to tell us and tell the audience how you felt when you first had your first alcoholic intoxicated experience. And how you felt.
It was like
when you had your first pot buzz. What did that do to you?
With the alcohol, it made everything warm and fuzzy, and it allowed me to disattach myself from reality.
Okay.
With the pot, it made me happy. It allowed me to be social. It kind of increased my ability to be funny, and when you're in high school and everyone else that smokes pot wants to smoke pot, and you steal, you steal a handful from your dad, you become the most popular kid in school.
Well, that's true.
So,
plus, you were able to disengage from your feelings and, get rid of your inhibitions. Understood.
Yeah, and so, and then, around 14 years old, I did heroin for the first time, and I quickly progressed to the needle. When I was, I did intravenous heroin for about 2 years, and then I was put into rehab.
Between the ages of 14 and 16, you did this? Yes,
and I'm 31 now, and that was the only time I ever used needles. I think that rehab experience saved my life, and that was when I first started going to AA and NA meetings. I was in Santa Ana. It was called Touchstones Rehabilitation. And I stayed sober for 2 years. So I was 18 years old.
Okay.
I was 16 when I went to the rehab, and I was there for 7.5 months. When I got out, I continued to go to meetings. I stayed sober, but I wasn't doing it for myself. I was doing it for other people. I was doing it for my friends, my family, mainly my father. So it was quantitative sobriety, but it wasn't qualitative, because I didn't really want to do it myself. I felt in my heart, I felt like I'm young. I still want to go out and experience things. And so I started smoking pot again. and then I started drinking, and I moved to Los Angeles for a few years, and my drinking got out of hand. I started blacking out, waking up in strange places. I started getting in trouble, and that's when my experience with institutions started up. I've been institutionalized most of my life.
From age what?
From age 12 and up.
What kind of institutions? What kind of institutions?
Rehabs, survival camps, mental institutions, and jail.
What's a survival camp? Can you give us a breakdown of what that is, please?
That's where, I kept running away. No matter what, no matter how, I just would not stay put. And I was, this was actually before I went to rehab. I was 14 years old, and so they put me on a plane to Utah, and you're out in the wilderness with a group of kids, and you have some adults that are there that are like trained individuals, and you live in the wilderness. You learn how to simplify your wants and needs, and you hike 14 miles a day, and they break you down physically. And then around the campfire at night, you would talk about your emotions. And when you don't have you can't hold walls up when you're physically broken down until the emotions flow. Mm-hmm. And that was my first experience.
What did you gain from that?
Well, I look back on it, and out of all the things I've had to go through institutional-wise, that was one of the greatest experiences of my life. Because it taught me how to be self-sufficient.
Okay.
That's good. That's positive.
But when I got back to my old stomping grounds, I was so young and impressionable and all my old friends that I quickly fell back into drugs and alcohol.
Who is they? Who put you there?
My father.
Okay. Who are you living with?
Right now? Well, I just got out of jail.
Then at that time.
Oh, at that time I was living with my father, but I was running away.
Okay.
And he was abusive to you, yes?
No, not at all.
No.
All right, okay.
Yeah, I didn't have abusive parents. My mother had a lot of boyfriends that were strung out on methamphetamines, and some of them were abusive to me.
Are you the only child?
No, actually, I'm the middle of 5.
So middle means you're the third born or the second born?
I'm the third born.
Okay. Do other siblings in your family have problems?
One of them is an alcoholic. My little brother, he smokes pot. And he doesn't really drink. My sister, she's a normal human being. And my youngest brother, he is kind of like me. He's been in and out of jail and rehabs and whatnot. And, he's done drugs and everything, but he's doing good right now. He has a different father. Actually, his father, my youngest brother has a different father. His father was a meth head that was around for many years, and he was probably the most abusive person in my life.
Would it have made a difference for you when you left that? Would it have made a difference for you when you left that wilderness camp to have been placed in a different place than back to your old haunts?
Probably. I'm not sure. I mean, I'm sure that, there's an infinite amount of variables that could have had happened, but it is what it is. Like, I am where I'm at right now. I'm sure there would have been a different outcome if I would have gotten out of the survival camp and then maybe been placed into like a sober living home. But instead, I just went straight back home, straight back to my old patterns.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off, Doctor.
Well, what first comes to mind is, what do you think powerless means over drugs and alcohol? What do you think that means?
Well, to me, it means just what it is. I mean, I know in my heart of hearts that this time around, that I jails, institutions, and death. I mean, I wound up, this last bender that I went on, I wound up in a hospital, and I was having seizures, and it ended up being that it was a mixture of both the alcohol, because I haven't done drugs. I haven't done drugs in a long time. I quit the drugs, but it was the alcohol that really had a stranglehold on me, and so I wound up in the hospital, and then I got a deep tissue X-ray, and they found like a mass in my head, and so I'm dealing with that right now.
What is it?
And I have a lot of medical issues. I have to go get a CAT scan and an MRI and all this stuff, and they have me on seizure meds.
Yeah, well, that's what happens to anybody who drinks for too long of a time. It affects the brain.
Oh, yeah,
it
definitely.
causes seizure disorders, and once you develop that type of thing, those seizure disorders go right into your recovery.
Oh, yeah, almost definitely. And so,
the reason I ask about the powerlessness is because so much is involved with relapse. Part of it is smell. Part of it is, and you were addicted to drugs. Part of it is simply going back to your zip code and going down the same street where you had used at one time. So when you go through a wilderness program like that, it would have been much more beneficial to have removed you and taken and put you into another place entirely.
Oh, yeah, most definitely.
Yeah, so that the triggers, because that's what powerless means. That's what powerless means. I was talking to a girl today who's relatively new, and she was going home from a meeting at night, and she was afraid to drive at night, that she would drive by a liquor store and have to go in it.
Oh,
and
yeah.
That's powerlessness. And most of our listeners here really don't understand how severe that is, but it's a subconscious thing. And she asked the man, how do I go home? And he said, you put your hand on the steering wheel, you walk straight ahead of you, and you don't take your hands off the steering wheel until you get home. But what I told her was, that's what our first step is. It means powerless. You are powerless to go from A to B. Now, she is a month or about a few weeks sober, but to go from A to B, she is terrified that she won't make it home if she goes by a liquor store. And I
have to avoid. I have to avoid certain areas. I go out of my way to circumvent liquor stores. Even though I only have 19 days this time, when I was in the hospital, I had a moment of clarity. They talk about this when you're in an Alcoholics Anonymous, that when you're ready, you're ready, and you have this sensation, this kind of moment of levity where you realize that you may. I know now that I may not get another chance. Like, I've been given many chances from my higher power, but after winding up in the hospital and the damage that I've done to my body, and I'm a very stubborn human being, and it took a brush with mortality for me to recognize the fact that that might be it. They say in the program, jails, institution, and death, and I was nigh on death. And next time I go out, if I were to go out, I probably won't come back. And so it's an extreme case.
Wait, here's what you have to say to yourself. You cannot say to yourself, the next time I go out. What you need to say to yourself is, I, Christopher, will not drink no matter what.
Yeah, my desire to stay sober is stronger than my desire to get drunk. Yeah.
Yeah, no matter what. Well, you've had a moment of clarity. What did that moment of clarity say?
Well, I was laying there in the hospital bed, and the seizures had come to a lull. And I looked up, and there was a nurse there. And I had the first moment of lucidity that I had had in weeks. And I just kind of, something washed over me. I wouldn't say that it was a warm feeling, but it was like the feeling of like when I would get out of jail, like there was this weird feeling of freedom because I knew in my heart that this time around was going to be the last time. Like I can't go back out, and so it was a sense of freedom.
Here's the next question I'm going to ask you. What do you have to give up to stay sober?
Well, I have to give up a lot. For instance, there's family members that I cannot be around because they still drink and use. I had to give up pretty much all of my friends from my childhood and on. I had to give up my job because of the seizures, because I was working on ladders. I can't drive until I get all of this cleared up. There's just a lot of things that, normal people take for granted that I realized through my addiction and my alcoholism, I've given up whether I wanted to or not. And so I'm in a position where it can be rough. There's been times where I'd sit there and go, wow, this is also overwhelming. Like, there's so much more work ahead. But then I realized that, I had built a pile. I had built a pile of problems, and I kept adding to it. But now in my sobriety, I realize that pile is where it's at, and I'm not going to add to it anymore. I'm going to chisel away at it, albeit maybe slow. Maybe it could take a decade, 2 decades, 3 decades. It could take the rest of my life. But I really do have an honest desire to remain sober.
Okay.
And
now here's what's coming up for you. You're coming up to the holiday season, which is a very dangerous time for people early in recovery. And it has to do with a lot of subliminal things. It has to do with smell, the smell of a Christmas tree. I've talked to one guy one time, it's just the smell of cinnamon. That's all he could think of as using. Smell. And which is a big part, the turkey. And then you get into other things like the tinfoil being, torn. You get a lot of triggers during the holiday season. How are you going to protect yourself from the things that happen during the holidays this year? Where are you going to go? What are you going to do?
Well, I'm going to surround myself with sober people. I have, like I said, I live with my father, and he's been sober for 6 years. He's in the program.
Okay.
I've only been hanging out with people that are in the program that are sober. I'm going to go to I go to at least two meetings a day. Good. Sometimes 3 or 4.
Good man.
Okay.
Good.
And I have the tools.
Here's what I'm going to tell you. What I would tell you is you're not working, you're not driving. There's a lot of things that have been taken away from you because of this disease. You go to 3 meetings a day for 3 months. And if you can do that, you go to 3 meetings a day for 3 months, you are probably going to be fine.
Yep.
But you hang out. You go to an early morning meeting, you get up, you go to a noon meeting, because you're not working now. You have to occupy that time.
Yes, I do.
And you're not always going to have this opportunity where you're not working. You're 31 years old. You're going to begin a career. So now is the time to grab on to all of those meetings, morning, noon, and night, every single day.
Yeah, I get up at 5:30, and I go to the 6 o'clock meeting. And then if there's a noon meeting, I go. If there isn't a noon meeting, I help my dad because he works, and he doesn't pay me because I'm staying at his house, so I work for room and board.
Right.
And then I go to a night meeting, and then I hang out with Lorena and a group of friends that we have, all of them sober. We all kind of marathon meeting it, because we're all early in our sobriety, and we latch on to each other. We take care of each other. We make sure that when one of us isn't feeling good or is, contemplating, any of the bad things that are, because our brains, it takes a long time for the brain to heal. And, we're creatures of repetition.
I can tell you, it's the same thing with Lorena. It's going to take 2 years for your brain to heal, for your brain to start, in Lorena's case, to start helping her with the pain. Your brain knows how to do all of this stuff without drugs.
Yep.
But we have interfered with it. As a culture, since you were born, you have a stomachache, someone gives you a Tums, you have a headache, they have Excedrin migraine in case you have a bad headache. They have things for every single thing you could possibly have a little dis-ease with. And what it does is interferes with our brain's ability, of the natural ability to take care of our bodies. This will heal. Things you have to watch out for. I don't know if you're a smoker, but you have to, there's a 65% greater chance of relapse when you are a smoker. And you won't hear that too much with people on the program who are smokers.
I never heard that one before. That's interesting.
Yep. Because it hits the dopamine receptor of the brain.
Okay.
And
that makes sense.
So don't just jump into another addiction like that. Try to ease down. If you're a smoker now, start getting less and less and less until you're ready to let that go.
Doctor,
can I
interject?
All of the correct things.
I just want to interject a question to you, Doctor. How damaging do you believe that alcohol and drug abuse is in reference to communicating with the opposite sex within a relationship setting? Just a thought.
Well, that's pretty much of a no-brainer. Alcoholism is a disease of perception. That's exactly what Christopher was telling you. It changes your reality. So you can have a miserable day. Whatever you're doing, your girlfriend broke up with you, you come home and you have a beer and everything is fine. It is magic. Now, it doesn't do that with the normal person out there, but 1 out of 10 people that drink anything, whether it be once a year, every 3 months, 1 out of 10 people are alcoholic. In the case of my family, there are members of my family that drank at age 13, knew from the very first drink that they were alcoholic because they experienced a blackout, a loss of memory while under the influence of the alcohol. I have a friend that from her very first drink, age 13 also, she did not remember what happened, and she thought every single person who drank anything experienced this. It's a genetic illness. Now, part of that illness has to do with how alcohol affects the pleasure zone of the brain. Alcohol is magic for the alcoholic. No matter what your day is like, have a glass of wine and everything is fine. It changes your reality. How does it affect a relationship? It affects your ability to make decisions. If you are alcoholic, a drink affects your ability to see reality as it is. So you make decisions based on what you see your new reality to be while you are drinking. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's it.
I mean, for me, my alcoholism got to the point where it no longer did that. I was drinking so much vodka that I withdrew into myself, and I was just pretty much hiding in the garage for the last few weeks that I was drinking, and just drinking myself into blackouts and passing out. And it gotten to the point where I was so physically addicted that I didn't think I'd be able to quit, and I had kind of consigned myself to death. Like, it wasn't like I was contemplating suicide consciously. It was subconscious. Like, I was slowly killing myself because I'm too much of a coward to like hang myself or to pull the trigger. So I was doing it slowly, and when I, and I really do believe that it takes a spiritual experience to get away from that. And for me, like I said, when I was in the hospital, I had some kind of divine intervention that, even though I knew it was going to be rough, I knew it wasn't going to be easy, but it was going to be worth it. And it took me about 6 or 7 days to get over the DTs. And I was shaking,
Yep.
and I was seizing.
Well, that has to do with the amount of alcohol you were drinking for an extended period of time.
Yep.
You did brain damage.
Oh, yeah,
What's
definitely.
interesting about your case, and might be interesting to the people who are listening, is all this time that you felt that this disease had you and there was no way out for you, you also had a father that was already in recovery. So
Yes.
you did know about AA. You knew that it worked. But
Oh, yeah,
you
I had 2 years previously.
You were
I'm a
in
chronic
this
relapser.
position where you actually believed there was no way out for you.
Yeah.
And I think that's
I was staring
absolutely
into the abyss.
fascinating. Okay, when you viewed your father's recovery, did you like what you saw in your father's recovery, or what was your observation as his son when he recovered and went into recovery? Did you see it as a positive? Did you see him having fun? Did you think it was boring? What did you see?
Well, it was kind of mixed emotions because, towards the end of my last research project, I only had an hour or two of lucidity a day, and that was when I'd wake up and I would be shaking, and I'd be waiting for the liquor store to open up.
Right.
And in those times, I would think about it, and I was happy for him, and I knew in my heart of hearts that what he was doing was my only way out of my current self-imposed torture. But when I would start drinking, all my emotions, I would cover them with the secondary emotion, which is anger, because I knew that it's what I needed. But I was in a pincer, and so I would then get upset, and I would, my relationship with my father, he stuck by me, but it was getting pretty bad there. And, I talked to him recently, and he told me, he was like, he's like, I'm glad that you're back in the program, because honestly, Chris, I didn't think that this time around that, you were going to make it out, because I'd never seen you so bad. And he kind of had to just give it up to God.
Right.
He couldn't have me around. I couldn't take care of my own dog, so he took my dog in. And, everything in my life that I loved and cared about, I was slowly but surely pushing away, and I didn't want it. It was just that I was stuck in it, and it really, and I can't explain, I can't illustrate what it was and how it was when I had my divine intervention. But what I can tell you is that I knew that finally, for the first time, I wanted to be sober for myself. I wanted to be sober for myself.
Oh, you're going to die, right.
I knew I was going to die, and I knew that I wanted to live, and I knew that the only way that I was going to escape it was to put my heart and soul into the program. And this time around, I've been taking commitments. I've been going to 2 or 3 meetings a day. I got a sponsor. I'm already working on the steps. Like, I'm not on the fence anymore. Like, both of my feet are in this basket time around.
You're active and you're working the program. That's what you're supposed to do.
Yes, and that is what matters. When I was sober for 2 years, I was kind of half-assing it, and I was just trying to get through, just trying to make everyone happy. I wasn't doing it for myself. And
okay, Chris, there's one thing that I want to really tell you is important here. I had a niece that did your story, And when she got sober, she no longer, after a couple of months, she no longer wanted to take the seizure medication they were giving her. And
Yes,
she died in her, just a minute, she died in her sleep at 90 days sober of a seizure in her sleep. And what I'm going to tell you is you're going to hear a lot of people in the program talk about different things when it comes to this. You have already developed a seizure disorder. And what I can recommend to you is that you keep following up with your doctor and take the Dilantin, which is an anti-seizure medication, until they think, yeah, I don't care what it is you're taking, you stay in contact, because that's what she died from. And she died sober, and she did exactly what you did. She would sit in her room and drink. She was hospitalized with a 0.47 alcohol level twice, which is severe toxic poisoning from alcohol. But what it did do is cause a seizure disorder in the brain. So I don't know where you stand with it, but once you've got that, don't let anybody interfere with your relationship with your doctor on how to maintain a seizure-free life.
Christopher, I want to interject with a question here. Doctor, how far along does one have to be in their disease until the actual brain damage begins to occur? And what is the initial and long-term physical and psychological damage?
Well, you know, as far as the damage occurs, I can tell you some people become addicted from the very first time they ever use something.
Right.
People who have genetic predisposition to this have a pleasure zone of the brain that is very sensitive to pleasure. And they can use a drug like crack cocaine one time, and they're addicted to it.
Yeah.
Their brain never, ever forgets this. It never forgets things like heroin. It never forgets things. And that's why they tell you that, you know, once you have become addicted, now, you know, I mean, I have relatives that blacked out the very first time they ever drank. Now, they already had the disease of alcoholism, even though they had only drank one time, because the disease of alcoholism is a continuum. It's a long continuum. And there's certain characteristics that any disease has, and alcoholism has them too. The most significant is a loss of memory when using alcohol. And that loss of memory, that amnesia state, is 100% sign. I'm going to get slammed for this, but it is 100% sign of genetic alcoholism. That doesn't mean you go to Betty Ford tomorrow, but what it does mean is you better pay attention. Whether you're 13 and have your first drink, 16, whether you're dating somebody that doesn't remember the night before, these are symptoms and signs of genetic alcoholism. Now, when it comes to brain damage like Christopher has, I think it depends on people, the size. It depends on a lot of different things. When the brain actually becomes damaged and irreparably, the brain is a phenomenal organ. We use very, very little of our brain. The brain comes in and I've seen people that could barely speak for months, and the brain heals itself. So
oh yeah, I couldn't.
Let her finish.
Go ahead. Well, anyway, go ahead, Christopher.
Yeah, I was when I got out of the hospital after my seizures, and I called my dad because I was on the streets when these were happening, because I was drinking so much he wouldn't allow me to live over there, and he told me, you know, as long as I stay sober, you can come back to the house. I had lost most of the function of my left arm and my left leg. I could hardly put a sentence together. I could barely even eat. I had to have my dad help me pretty much with everything. And over time, it's come back, but I could still tell the difference. I see in my movements and my speech how much effect it's had. And it took sobriety. The alcohol was just gonna make it worse and worse. And, to be 31 years old and hobbling around like, I was 80, it was a wake-up call.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, how are you going to keep this wake-up call current for you?
Working the steps.
Staying close?
Being honest. Being a right person. Being of service. I do brain exercises. Stay afraid. Stay afraid of alcohol and drugs, because in your case, they're a deadly poison. You might as well take cyanide. My program's wholly fear-based. I know that there's nothing scarier to me than what I went through this last time. And I know that I can't imagine it getting worse, but I know that it would.
It will.
And
it will.
And I don't want to go to a deeper level of hell than I've already gone.
Well, that's very honest, Christopher.
So let's just say we're talking to a parent now that has a child that was in your situation when they were young. What do you think your parents could have done differently that may have made a difference to help you in your recovery? I mean, you might not have had a chance to think about this.
I feel like my dad did everything he could. He tried his hardest. I think that I had to kind of come to it in my own time. My mom could have been a little more present. She was giving me beers and alcohol well before I was 21. She'd have parties and stuff like that. So obviously, she could have had a little bit more discretion. They say sometimes discretion's the better part of valor. And, she shouldn't have had, drug addicts and alcoholics running around the house. And, I was just a little kid.
Your dad should not have weed.
My dad shouldn't have had weed. My dad shouldn't have had weed, and he knows that too.
Okay, so let me ask you one more thing, and then I want to get to Loretta. How dangerous do you believe weed
down
is
to 2 minutes,
for
Dr.
the young
Koster.
adolescent?
Just so everybody knows, we're down to 2 minutes here. We're going to be off the air in about 2 minutes.
Well, I believe that marijuana is a gateway drug. It alters the mind, and so that it softens your resolve, so that the next time you come to another substance, you're more willing to give it a try.
Okay. Now, Lorena, were you involved with marijuana also?
Yes.
From what age?
Probably 14, 15.
Okay, here's what I do know about marijuana. From young adolescents, 24% will become addicted. That's one out of 4 kids that use marijuana will become addicted. They will stop going to school. They will stop skateboarding. Mm-hmm. They'll stop doing the things that they like and replace it with drugs. As they get older, and when they're past age 24, marijuana affects 9% will become addicted to it. I can't believe we're going to legalize this. I don't know we can stop it. 9% will become addicted. 1 out of 10 people who drink anything are addicted to alcohol. So it will be about the same on the addiction level. Okay, I'm going to let you finish up here, Rick. And
right. I really appreciate you coming on, Dr. Koster and Lorena and Christopher. It was a pleasure to hear from both of you, and thank you for your honesty. And we are at the end of our show, and I need to let you guys know that the website for Life Repair Recovery Talk Radio is www.latalkradio.com. Life Repair Recovery Talk Radio is on Channel 1. We are broadcasting live from our studios every Sunday at 6 p.m. West Coast time. All of our shows are archived on the www.latalkradio.com site and can be accessed 24/7. We're at the end of this week's show, and I'd like to leave you with some wisdom from the late, great John Flynn.
Disappointment is the caboose on the choo-choo train of expectation. Anything you want from anybody, you give them what you want from them. It's the only way you're going to get it. Life is about giving, not getting, day at a time.
Thank you, John, and thank you for listening. Good night and good luck.
You're listening to Life Repair Recovery Talk Radio with Rick Thompson, only on LA LA Talk Radio.